right, peace and blessings, everybody. Welcome to the episode of Political Street. I'm your community ambassador, Mr. Robert J. Anderson. Before I get started, on Political Street, I interview business owners, community leaders, and elected officials. All right, I'll give my disclaimer. Political Street is not a political endorsement podcast. We're here for information purposes only. All right, so anything that you give is on you, not me. All right, but no, this gentleman here, y'all, I met this guy, man. We actually met in a quote-unquote, I guess, a competitive type of atmosphere. Even though we weren't competing against each other, we were running for the same seat. Back in 2019, y'all know I ran for City Council District B, and in that race we had with like 13
to be exact.
13 people. Mr. Broderick Butler, man. So, Mr. What's going on, man?
It's nothing much, but hold on a second.
Yeah.
Before we get started, where's Shannon Sharp?
Club Shay Shay.
I thought this was Club Shay Shay. I was looking for the cognac and the cigar. But man, I need to get up out of here.
Man, I gotta get some sponsors, man. You know what I mean? So if you know some people that's selling some alcohol, man, they can sponsor. I have some on here. You know,
I wanted to do my impression. Skip.
Right.
You sure Shannon ain't gonna show up?
He ain't here, man.
I guess I got to deal with you.
I'm next best.
All right.
So yeah, man.
Well, we did meet, and here's the thing. I want to give shouts out because we had 13 people and 13 people that contributed themselves. Sorry, they were community leaders that stepped up to give themselves. And here's the thing. After the election, we all sort of went our separate ways. But one of the things I will always remember, and I want to give people their flowers. One of them is not with us anymore. And people need to know that. But we had Ben White, Alice Kirkman, Alvin Bird, Allison Cantonier, and she's the one that passed on during COVID. Kenneth Perkins, Joseph Jefferson, Huey German Wilson, Prince Bryant, Renee Jefferson Smith, Cynthia Bailey, Tasha Jackson, who eventually won the seat, myself, and of course, the indubitable Robert Anderson. Think about that, man.
Yeah.
And the majority, I think 12 of us are still Mr. Bird passed on as well. So out of the 13 of us, 11 of us are still in the world, still in the communities doing good. Now, the window may have closed. We may have gone back to our lives. But again, that was a unique time that we came together.
I agree.
And it wasn't a competitive situation, but iron sharpens iron, and we moved on to have relationships to be able to do this.
We still haven't smoked a cigar together yet, man. But
we will. But one of the key things is I'm going to use a former YouTuber said one of the signs of a high value individual, specifically male, is having a network. We added to our network by being able to call each other, check on each other, and just didn't, we still orbit each other.
Right.
And there was
before we go ahead, I didn't even tell who you were. This is Broderick Butler, y'all. So
that's how cool we are in this deal.
This is Broderick, man. So, but what I like to do first, though, bro, I like to get a background of where you grew up, and then we do a fast forward to where you are now.
Sure.
Is that
happy
okay?
to do that. More than happy to do that.
Okay, all right. So where'd you grow up?
Cynic Wood, Houston, Texas. Product of North Forest Independent School District when it existed. Went to Rogers, Oak Village Middle School, then Forest Brook. Okay. Now here's the interesting
part. Those are historic schools
that don't exist anymore. So welcome to Northeast Houston, where the public school system abandoned us, got pushed further out into greater Houston and Harris County, which is another element, something we don't need to get into, but it's interesting for those that are listening. If they thought about it, some of them who probably are past the age of 60 still got a high school, still got an elementary school, whatever. They have a legacy.
Right.
I have a legacy only that I can tell you. Right. I have a legacy that you can look at a photograph and there ain't a lot of them photographs left.
Right.
So it stings to be able to tell people that all of the public schools, I'm a product of public schools, all of the public schools that I attended in Northeast Houston physically don't exist anymore, not even in name.
Wow. Did you grow up with mom and dad in the household or just mom?
Mom and dad in the household. Okay. We came from Hare Street in 5th Ward, which when I talked to Mr. Bird, I didn't know, being a child, all of what things were called, but he said they called it the bottom. So we were on the south side of I-10 and on Hare Street. And about maybe 7, before I got to be 10 or 12, we found out about a community because mom and dad were both in the house. They were working. Mom at Southwestern Bell. I had to explain that to a 25-year-old today.
Wow, they didn't know Southwestern Bell was.
Exactly. They're 25.
Right.
And dad worked at TRW Mission. They made oil drilling products.
Wow.
So 2 incomes allowed us to move up. So Scenic Wood opened up. I thought this was a brand new community, but it was previously, I think, a Jewish community.
That sounds about right.
And so when they moved further out north, there was some new homes being built. Mom and dad put us in the station wagon, drove us over to Scenic Wood, pulled in a lot, said, look at the house. We said we liked it. They said, I guess we're going to do it. We tore the sheetrock off the walls because that was our house now. But it wasn't sheetrock. It was something over the sheetrock for a brand new house.
Gotcha.
But it's the whole thing of when you decide that that's your house, your wife runs and turns on the stove, she runs upstairs, she takes ownership of it. Well, the kids had the ability to take ownership of the house. And so now, like the Jeffersons, we went from a shotgun house over in Fifth Ward, Texas, to a 3-bedroom house in Scenic Wood. Wow. And from there, did Rogers, Oak Village, then Forest Brook, and the beautiful part of being a part of North Forest Independent School District, we had an incubator of I think it was the largest or one of the largest black independent school districts. So I got to grow up in a neighborhood that people look like me. I got to go to school in a school throughout my public school deal all the way to 12th grade with people that mirrored me. And
it makes you kind of walk with your chest out a little bit, and you want to excel, and you're not really in like survival mode in a sense, you know what I mean? So
if you don't know any difference, and there's gonna be a phrase that we're gonna get into called black excellence. But when you don't know anything different, that is your worldview. Right. And if your worldview is solid, that people mirror me, that people when I go outside to play, the kids across the street, we attend the same school, but here's the thing. It's like living in Chocolate City. And if you don't know any different, but Wakanda, and Wakanda is tight.
It is.
You tight.
Right.
But then what happens is when you get to be a certain age and you want to go make a little bit of money and you're legal age to go work a job, you venture outside the community because the only thing that was problematic was we had a bedroom community. There was not a lot of industry and jobs and entrepreneurs, what we call them today.
Right.
So you had to go find jobs in other parts of the city of Houston. So as I was explaining to a young lady, I had to get on a metro bus, ride all the way to a thing called Astro World, and ride that bus, which is now Reliant, so people can sort of figure out what I'm saying. So I'm heading from Humble all the way through downtown Houston to get to Astro World, and then coming from Astro World back to earn $7 an hour back in the...
that was a lot back then.
Yeah, back in the 70s and 80s. But once I ventured outside the community, I started seeing kids because Astro World was a huge amusement park, and they used cheap labor, which was teenagers for summer jobs. But then you started interacting with non-black individuals of your same age, and they had a different worldview.
Now, quick question. So after high school, did you attend college or you just went straight into the workforce?
When we were juniors and seniors, you had to start having that question. Because the majority of our parents never went to college. They were all high school graduates. So for me, you started to have the conversation to try to figure out what the answer was going to be. So Forest Brook was a pipeline to Texas Southern, Prairie View, if you did go to college. But we had a rare number of people that went as far as Syracuse, that some went to Penn State, some went to the West Coast, but you could count them on a hand. So I got to be a senior. My deal was I was going off to college. but it was probably going to be Prairie View for engineering. So what wound up happening is I go through my senior. We had a class of 540. To us, that was large.
Right.
So a lot of people around the country, wherever they live geographically. Right. So decided to go off to college, but here's the thing. I was one of the few that could go off to college. My best buddy, who I reconnected, that lives in near Waco now in a city called Gatesville, his only option was the military. So welcome to this black community, this Wakanda, this we don't know anything different. But when it now comes time to get pushed out into a real world, the military, for a lot of my classmates, trade school
was only
for a lot of my But now looking back, that same guy, when we reconnected, he was this close to me when we actually sat down and said, I know you. We got back together. He called me one day and he just paused and he was deep with it. And I was like, what's up, man? He was like, I got something to tell you. I said, what's up? He said, you know something that I've been thinking about since we reconnected after we graduated, and he's from City Gas. He said, we wasn't supposed to make it. I'm doing what? He said, think about it, man.
Wow.
We were young black men growing up in the 70s, graduated high school in the 80s. We went out into the world that we now can look back historically. Think about it. I'm not saying we was in, cracked out.
Because that was an era too, though, man.
Yeah, South Central LA, cracked out Brooklyn. We were in Houston, Texas, but still being in Houston, Texas, lifespan of a black man, not getting caught up, the crack era, all kinds of stuff going on. He said it, but I had to check him on it. But it hit me straight to the heart because I knew what he meant.
Right.
But my whole thing is I had to check myself to go, are we doing this? And he said, yeah, think about it, man. We weren't supposed to make it.
Yeah.
So he said, I did 20 years in the military, Army. I retired. I didn't come back to Houston because there was nothing there for me. He said, you went to college. Now you are close to retiring. And he said, and we're going to be somewhere past our 55-year-old. And he said, and we're still here. And that was the kaplunk moment.
Wow.
The bladoosh moment.
Right.
We weren't supposed to make it. But here we are on the phone talking to each other. I live in Gatesville, Texas, which is a 4-hour drive from you. You still live in Houston. And we're still here, man. We still here. Forever long, because of life expectancy. And that's another thing. When you ask me about my community, one of the worst statistics of my community in Northeast Houston, and we talking City Gas, Rosewood, Cashmere, Fontaine. We have the lowest life expectancy in Greater Harris County.
It's because it's a cancer cluster and whatnot, right?
In some elements, it's a cancer cluster. In others, it's lifestyle. In others, it's heredity. And then there's just the big question mark. Why are we dropping dead so early?
Right.
That, as my buddy called me and said, we weren't supposed to make it. But that was a conversation about outside sources. Nobody shot us, locked us up, put us on paper. We got on drugs or alcohol. We dodged that. This thing is an unknown.
Wow. I mean, I think, even over there at Acres Home, man, like I didn't know that Acres Home at one point was a dump site. A lot of old trash get dumped there, you know what I mean? And so now, in the bottoms where they did it was like now you got homes over there. So it's going to be interesting the next 30, 40 years of what's going to happen as far as statistics go of how, what's going to happen. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, yeah. So, well, in college, what did you study? I mean, could you say with engineering, was it?
I started off as an engineer because I had an analytical mind. I wasn't great with math, so that became problematic. And I did not, my senior year, take my advanced courses seriously. So what happened was the year before junior year and senior year, I should have been hardcore math and science, STEM, before we got there. The kids that did follow the engineering path and got out of Smiley and Forest Brook and went to Prairie View for engineering or Texas A&M, they did well because they prepared themselves.
Yeah.
I, not having a family that did the college prep stuff, they said, hey man, just get out of school in the top 50, get out of school with a B average, be an honors graduate, you'll be fine. But here's the thing. That did not prepare me for the hardcore realities of the real world. And the real world is basically the NFL. You don't, not for long. Not for long if you don't. This is a production-based league.
Right.
You 1,000-yard runner, we gonna pay you.
Right.
You 2,000-yard quarterback, we gonna pay you. But if you just another guy, we can find another one of you.
That's true.
So I did not take advantage. So when I showed up at the university that I did show up at, instead of Prairie View, competitive. One inkling I got was the summer that I was going into my junior year. My mom stuck me over at Rice University for mathematics. Man, them kids were cold-blooded. They were non-African American.
I bet.
Now, we are, I think we're probably 14, 15 on Rice University campus. And we doing geometry, we doing calculus.
Yeah.
And them kids were cold-blooded.
Yeah.
They were being prepared for the outer world because that was the expectation. So when you ask me about school, I've made it to the University of Texas, but they sat me down with the engineering program, and the coldest thing they said to me, to tell me that this wasn't Wakanda, they went in a room, they talked. I came out, the gentleman said, everybody's gone. It's just me and you. I'm going to tell you what the decision is. You will not make it in the engineering program at the University of Texas at Austin. But what I do believe is you will matriculate in another discipline at the University of Texas at Austin.
Gotcha.
So you go home. This is the Jordan moment. You go home.
Oh, he got benched, he got cut. Yeah.
Yeah, you got cut.
Yeah.
You go home, look through the core syllabus, and you find a different major.
Find something.
But I know for a fact you'll get out of this school because you're smart enough.
Yeah.
But you just ain't the guy we were looking for. We needed a math and science guy.
Right.
You like math and science, you can tolerate it, but you're not that guy. So here's the deal. Find your bliss, but you're going to get out of here. And it's like the gentleman said at Prairie View later on when I met him. I asked him about Prairie View, and he said there was a time that all we told kids, black kids that did not have the background, their parents didn't, first-generation college students, just get in school, man. We going to get you out of Prairie View.
Yeah. And
I appreciated that. So I got that same sentiment by talking to specific people at the University of Texas that kind of had seen me before. But they didn't devalue me. They said, hey, man, you're not Jordan, but you can be a Pippen or a Rodman. Just know your lane.
Yeah, that's what happened to me at Prairie View too. I went there with ambitions of being an engineering, and when I started seeing those math classes,
it ain't no joke.
Yeah, so I got into poli-sci. Yeah, poli-sci minor in psychology. So yeah. And
that's a segue to when I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, that's why I brought you on, man, because we can sit here and talk about life all day long, but we got a climate that I think that we have to talk about because of. Not because just who we are, I mean, our skin color, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like us, you don't hear about black nationalists anymore. You know what I'm saying? You don't hear.
But you hear about non-black nationalists.
Right. That's my point. You know what I mean? And so, but this current climate is still affecting us. You know what I mean? And so I know that you do some type of work in Austin and things like that.
Correct.
And so I'm assuming it's affecting you now, but.
It's affected. I'm a consultant at this juncture. Went up to school. When I switched those majors, I went into government. I didn't want to do business because I didn't think that would work for me. But government, I had the ability. But luckily, because I think like an engineer, I can break stuff down. But technically, government is about people. Favors, getting somebody to do something, get somebody not to do something. So one of the things that eventually it helped me understand was I was excellent doing this political stuff. I could read it. I liked government. I got the degree. I got out. I did an internship at the Capitol. I went to Washington. So I've met presidents. I've met world leaders. it opened up a whole new world for me. Because remember, we want to know what you little farmers in Wakanda can contribute to the greater world.
Right.
And then the Black Panther showed them, and they said, we never knew. He said you weren't supposed to.
Right.
But I've decided that we need to share and open up.
Right.
So I was able to go down a path of politics as a young black man that unfortunately, a lot of us don't. Most people go through life and they worried about how to put food on the table, send a kid to college, but they're not worried about these politicians.
That's true.
But that became my life. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was black leadership in the black community and the non-black community. Because as I said earlier, here's the essence of my philosophy, Rob. There is no training or a lot of training to be a politician, to be political.
I agree.
But I voted since I was 18. I grew up in Northeast Houston with political families. Y'all got Beulah Shepard. We had Emma Horn. So some young people, some black people grow up in political families. Most people do not. They grow up in working class families. So I got a degree in government. I've done internships. I've studied in Washington. I've drafted bills, passed bills, killed bills. I've done the literal work. And like I told you, I met all these dignitaries. Some of this stuff I wrote down because I don't want to lose myself. But I worked for politicians like Rodney Ellis, the late Sylvester Turner, and others. And I learned what it is to be around politicians, black and non-black. But sadly, a lot of the black ones were not prepared. There was no school.
Interesting.
There was no training. But a lot of folks are just citizen elected officials, which means I'm a regular dude, but I might have a job like a lawyer, doctor, rancher. And
I mean, but not to cut you off. So here's my thing. So if I'm not mistaken, Mickey Leland had some type of program where he brought people on it and kind of weaned them a little bit, because from I know Rodney Ellis was under him, Judon Boney, and even Sheila and a few people whatnot, So
I think those were paid employees.
Oh wow! Okay.
But those
That's
paid
different. That's different.
And specifically Rodney Ellis, who I was in his internship program, like most people. And one of the things when Steve Harvey met Robert Smith, who's the billionaire in Austin, he said, "I'm gonna give you 15 minutes." That's what I give everybody. Steve Harvey showed up, was talking to him about a boys' camp that he wanted to do for young black men to spend near a lake a summer. He asked Steve, how many kids you got? He said 100. And so he said, keep talking. Guy's assistant came in 15 minutes. He did that. She walked out. Steve said, I got 5 more minutes. He started talking. 5 minutes later, assistant comes in.
That's right.
Guy does that. No, he just does a sign.
Okay.
The lady walks back out. Steve goes, I done got 10 extra minutes. And then they finish. He said, thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate it. I'm going to have a question for you. You got any questions for me? Steve said, yeah. Why? Because I looked you up, man. You say 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes. Why did I get the extra 10 minutes? You sent that woman back out twice. He said, oh, good question, Steve. You never asked for no money. And Steve said, well, about my program. He said, I got a question for you, Steve. He said, yeah. Is 100 kids? Yeah. Have you ever thought about scaling up? Steve said, what? He said, how do you think I got to be a billionaire? Every time somebody presented me with a great idea, they said, man, I want to sell 5 cars on a used car lot. Hey, man, I want to climb 6 mountains. He says, why don't you climb 1,000? Scale up.
Scale up, yeah.
Think big.
Right.
Think Starbucks, Apple. Don't think George Jefferson Cleaners. And a lot of people might not get that reference, but don't think local dry cleaner.
Right.
Think Starbucks.
Right.
And he said, that's how you get to be a billionaire. And Steve said, that was what I took away from that. He invested later, but what he gave me was vision.
Vision, yeah.
And that's something that African American, black political leaders are missing. When you don't have the training, when you don't have the background, you miss the vision. But You can be non-African American, mediocre, and it don't matter because it's who your daddy is,
Right.
who you connected,
Right.
you are looked at. So here's an example. Texas A&M, about 20 years ago, I'm sitting with some people and they say, yeah, we the number 2 public university. You guys over there, the Longhorns, are number 1. But we cool being number 2 in your draft. Because in track, that's how you get around folk. You let them run themselves out. And when it comes that bell lap, you go around them and you put your kick in and you coast right past them. And hey, man, even if it's a millisecond. So I said, so what y'all gonna do? They said, we're going to do what y'all ain't doing. See, y'all up here, big bad this. We're producing political leaders. And I said, so what? They said, political leaders that are going to take spots in government all over the country, and they're going to be able to control resources, political power, open up doors, create internships for other of us. And before you know it, and then all of a sudden, 10 years later, 20 years later, they had the governor's mansion. They had the comptroller. They had and Texas A&M graduates were running Texas, and they wear them rings.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, bless you, you got a mafia, you got a network, but you got a network that everybody is thinking the same, produce the same, wearing the same symbol, that ring. So much so that Texas A&M in the last probably 7 years, they expanded it. And you want to know how they expanded it? They expanded it to include in their School of Public Policy, the Bush School, young women who can become political leaders. So those women go through political training to be the future female political leaders in Texas. You know how? Because they called me when I worked for a legislator and said, hey, your boss is a female legislator. We'd like for her to come on a weekend and give a speech to a room full of non-African American women who are taking courses to get degrees, experience in being political leaders. They learn in the game. They go to school.
Hold on a second, though, Broderick. I mean, I hear all that. But my thing is this, though. Even though they're being trained, if I'm not mistaken, they got to get voted in. So if they don't get voted in, how do they get into these seats?
So there's a seat that's available. And the last time I checked, in Texas is more rural than it is urban.
Check.
So outside of all the major urban areas, Texas is a huge rural state.
It is.
And it's a conservative state. It's a red state. And it has been since the Democrats, I guess, in the 1980s. So here's the thing. Rob run for a position in Houston, Texas. 2019, you did. 13 people signed up. If Rob drove all the way out to Polk County, Texas, got his residency, ran for county commissioner, Rob ain't enough people. They got more cows than people out here, man. I should win hands down.
Right.
But if Rob goes to the town hall to speak, and the other candidate is Becky Sue, class of 2003 from Texas A&M. Her dad was a former county judge. Her husband is a big cattle rancher.
Right.
And Rob gets up and says, man, I'm from Acres Home, Houston, Texas, but I decided to move out here to the country. Man, I'd love to represent y'all. And they look at you, and then they look over and say, Becky Sue, you running? Becky Sue said, yeah. They said, 2003 you got out of A&M?
Okay.
They say, yeah.
Okay.
And that repeats itself all over the great large state of Texas. And you build an entrenched network to the point Rob got to get up and go back to Houston, Dallas, or San Antonio to try to run for something. Or Rob has to change some affiliation and do things that may not be the Wakanda way. And all of a sudden, Rob says, but that ain't me.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Rob never becomes an elected official outside a major urban area. But Becky Sue from class of 2003, Texas Tech, class of 2017, Texas A&M, class of 2000 from East Texas, Stephen F. Austin. So non-African Americans are not learning and being trained and brought up in politics. Sorry, African Americans, black leaders are not being brought up and trained in politics, but non-black leaders are being brought up, trained in politics to the point they've made it a formal course, part of the Bush School. That's a presidential library. That's a former president. That money goes to that school to take care of them. Where is that happening at institutions that have people that mirror
Like
our
this.
image?
Good point. So but we have to come back to that. That's a good point. But let me ask you this then. So, is it safe to say that by them not being trained, that we really can't hold them accountable then?
Well, when it comes to accountability, black people got to be twice as good to just be good as non-black people. But here's the deal. If you twice as good when you get the job, however you get the job, you should be twice as good when it comes to the outcomes.
True.
But I don't really see that.
Right.
What I see is when a black person wins elected office, there's a lack of training. They don't bring in themselves as trained. They don't bring in trained staff. So but other non-blacks, if they come in, they're given the benefit of the doubt that they know something. But here's the thing. What if they know just as much as you? Perception-wise, because they are non-black, people give them the benefit of the doubt. So in black politics, this is the game. The game is based on persuading people. It's not about Rob. It's numbers. So I'll give you an example. Somebody was interviewing Jesse Jackson, and they said, and this was a time ago, so they thought this was an appropriate conversation. So they said to Jesse, hey, Jesse, why are black people so great at sports? And they thought Jesse was going to give all this and da-da-da. Jesse simply said, well, in football, the field is always 100 yards long. If I'm not mistaken, in basketball, the court is always 90 feet. The rims are always 10
feet, right?
Regulation. He said in baseball, you can tell the bases are certain, the height of the fence in the outfield, when you hit a home run, it goes over. He said, so in games where we play where the rules are public, we kick y'all behind. And the guy said, what? He said, because there's a less opportunity to cheat.
Good point.
Because when you see a ball go over a center field ahead and they said that one ain't coming back, it's like Bear Bryant said when the guy said, Coach, we was first and goal. Now we 4th and 1. He said, son, we 4th and 1. He said, it don't matter. You got to be undeniable. So what I want you to do, when we run this play again for the 4th time on the 1 yard line, I want you to hand the ball to the referee at the back of the end zone. Undeniable. So African American black politicians, you need to be undeniable, but we're more focused on ourselves. We don't have the training that we walk into the position. But if you're non-African American, you get the benefit of the doubt to get up to speed. And so this is politics. It's not about you. It's about how many people you can convince to be on your team to help y'all win. And winning is not about Rob passed the bill. Winning is Rob got the necessary votes on the council. Rob got the necessary people to back him in the community to get the initiative passed. But when you show up and it suddenly becomes all about you and not about the people and making sure that the people understand. So Rob, we want to get X done. And Rob is a brilliant strategist, and he tells us how he's going to put this together to the point that the end product is the outcome of us winning. As I said to somebody the other day, I said, when it came to the Democratic Party, when it came to something outside of the current party, I said, that's why y'all losing. And I said, because these people talk about in the terms of winning and losing. Y'all don't talk about that because y'all think that it's gross, it's more than that. It is, because politics is two things, and one of the things I'll talk to you is about politics versus governing.
I was going to get to that, yeah.
When you sitting in the seat doing all this good and bringing a coalition and a network and being a statesman, because here's what being a statesman is. Somebody walks up to you and says, Rob, I need you to vote for something in Lubbock. We really need that in Lubbock. Can I get that vote from you?
Is it somebody, a lobbyist, or is it just somebody in general?
Another elected official.
Okay, gotcha.
Say you're on the state House floor, state Senate floor,
Okay.
floor in Washington, D.C. Hey, Rob, we in Congress. I need you to vote for something in Oregon. Hey, Bob, man, you never lied to me. You've been solid. Even though you're on the other side of the aisle, we don't see eye to eye on 9 out of 10 things. You still have a lot of integrity. And you've had my back on some stuff. So, Bob, whatever it is you need me to vote for, I got you. And you walk off. And then I walk up to you and say, Rob, why you you just gave away. And you turn around and say, Broderick, sometimes you got to help people that you never going to meet. That's part of my job. I have the vision to see that. That guy has voted on 3 bills that took care of Acres Home, took care of Northeast Houston, and took care of Sunnyside. And he ain't never going to go to one of those 3 places. But he's a solid dude that understood I needed that for my district.
And, and I'm glad you said that, because as I'm thinking about it, we don't really hear, what a Sylvester Turner had to do or what a Sheila Jackson Lee had to do as far as talking to a Republican to get something pushed or whatever else. We're just seeing that, okay, the Republicans are all bad, and so we don't really deal with them. But we don't hear about these policies that these bills get pushed that's got to get voted on. You know what I'm saying?
And I'll tell you about the bills and the policies, but I'll tell you the how. A good thing is a good thing. A bad thing is a bad thing. But let's elevate it to something different. Those people got elected to represent us, and they go into a competitive situation against people that got folks from nowhere we'll ever be, non-black politicians to represent them. It's a competitive situation for resources. More than not, you're going to be on the losing side of a lot of things. Your ego doesn't matter. What matters is that you have enough vision, understanding, and temperament that you take the loss, forget the loss, and learn the lesson. So the next time you can be victorious for me. That is what tenure, that is what having an understanding for you get there. That is understanding the rules that you see publicly. But politics is different. It's not a game.
Right.
Politics is dealing with people, not a white line to where you step on the line and they can take a picture of it. Politics is about getting a group of people more than the opposition that you can win by the necessary vote. So if you need 94 people, you can get 94. But what happens is, Rob, if I'm trying to take you out, I cut into your 94. There's no rule against that. So unlike football, where the ball goes in the basket, but did you step on the three-point line or were you behind the three-point line? We can look at that. But nobody looks at that you pulled the guy in the back room and said, if you ever vote for something that Rob Anderson ever puts out there again, man, I'm going to destroy them wheat farmers in your district. Say, man, hold on. You can't talk to me like that.
Man.
Last time I checked, I was a Speaker of the House. I set the agenda. I can make your life and your constituents miserable. So, you with me or you with Rob? And all of a sudden, he comes out the back, puts his arm around your shoulder and say, Rob, I'm in a tight one, man. I ain't going to explain it to you. I can't do what I told you I could do. Rob goes, but you gave me your word. I know, Rob, and maybe one day we'll sit down and have a beer and I'll explain this to you. But it's got to be that way.
Man, the crazy part about this, man, we don't have a lot of time. This got to be a 2-part series, man, because we could talk at least 4 hours about just what you gave right there was so profound, man, because a lot of people don't get this side of politics. We only hear about, okay, you know what, we vote the person in, they get in there, okay, what are you going to do and this and that, but they don't know, okay, well, this person can't do this because there are other things that they, you know what I'm saying, that's keeping them.
Bruh, you ain't in Wakanda no more. You ain't in Acres Home no more. You ain't in Sunnyside. You are in the halls of the United States Congress. You are in the halls of the Texas Capitol. You are in the halls of the city of Houston. Here's an example of how you just don't get it. Even though, and I'll tell you one thing, Harold Dutton, I got to give you his props. He saw me one day. We went in his office. He turned to me and said, "Son."
Wait, you said give him his props. That's a stretch for some people. But go ahead.
We're talking 20 years ago, and I'm a young kid that just got the Capitol. He turned and said, something to me. He said, son, power is always around you. You just got to know how to tap into it.
Wow.
So now how he did it, that's on him.
Right.
But when you drop me a gem and a nugget and I see over a period of 20, 30 years that power is always around you. So when it came to the city of Houston, somebody said, man, go down to City Hall. I said, man, the city of Houston ain't doing nothing that's serious enough for me to be worried about. So I go down there and I run into C.L. Bradford, who was a former city council member.
C.L. Bradford,
And
former police chief too, wasn't he?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And I say to him, yeah, man, somebody told me to come down to see what y'all was doing. This is y'all city elected officials. He said, Butler, do you know how much money goes through the Houston City Council every day? I said, what you talking about? He said multi-million-dollar contracts every day. He said, we probably at that point the 5th, 6th largest city, but in the country of the United States of America. So that put me up on game that showed me I didn't know everything.
Right.
That the city of Houston moves multi-million dollars through it every day, just like any other thing of a large entity. So,
but how are they saying that they don't have no money then? All this money is being moved, but
it's how you spend it. And it's just like if somebody walked up to you and said, Rob, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep.
Yeah, right.
And if you blow your cars on 5 Porsches and you only got one behind to sit and drive one car at a time, instead of buy a Porsche, buy property, put stocks and bonds, pay for your daughter's nursing degree or medical school degree. Make your money work for you.
Right. That makes sense.
Not just blowing it to where at the end of the day, somebody comes up to you and says, Rob won the lottery. But he wound up like a lot of lottery winners.
Broke, yeah. No, I wouldn't lie. If I first of all, nobody gonna know. Second of all, I definitely ain't going broke.
We'll have that conversation. And that was one conversation that you wanted to have with me about finance, and I wanted to talk to you about BRIC. If you want to have that, now I'll give a tease for the next time. When it comes to BRIC, which is the name, it's an acronym for the companies Brazil, Russia, India, and China that are putting together their own currency. Somebody sat me down and explained that's for them to get out from underneath sanctions. And I said, what are you talking about? They said, so here's the deal. Me and you are friends for a long time. Man, we accept each other the way we are. We are hyper competitive. We love sports. And here's the deal. I dog you out at soccer.
Right.
You just, your head is on us. Butler kicking that ball, his feet, he dribbles with his feet and everything. And I dog you out and I talk trash. So you say, I'm tired of this. I'm going to change this. So you say, Butler, man, I won't play you again. I say, cool. It's going to be the same outcome. You say, hey, man, I'm going to text you where to meet me, and we're going to go do it, and we're going to see who the best athlete is. I go, Rob, you know who the best athlete is.
You know what time it is, right?
I get a text. It says, meet me at Reliant. I walk into Reliant. I say, well, it's a big stadium, so maybe we're going to put a soccer field out there and everything. And then you say, Butler. I say, yeah, Rob, come on over, man. We're about to do this. And I say, all right, Rob. And then you reach in your bag and pull out a football, not a soccer ball. And you say, all right, let's do this. One-on-one, I'm going to be the wide receiver. You're going to be the defensive back. But one of the things that you always knew about me, and it was not an issue for how we competed, I didn't have any. I was born with no hands, Rob. So what Rob did was change. We are doing an athletic endeavor, but Rob changed the item that is key to us getting this done.
Makes sense.
Instead of a soccer ball that I'm killing you with my feet because I don't have no hands.
Right.
Rob changes and says we're going to do a football that is a hand sport.
Right.
And when I look at you, I go, Rob, you go, say, baby, you're a superstar athlete.
Right.
So make it happen.
Right.
You have put me in a difficult situation where this is no longer a game that I am even close to being competitive with. That is how BRIC is. If Russia doesn't want to have the United States sanction the U.S. dollar, if China doesn't want to have the United States sanction, in other words, mess with our money, reach into the bag push the bag with the soccer ball over, pull out a bag with the football and say, this is my game. We no longer playing your game.
Yeah.
And somebody say, I've seen them footballs before. You got to be a cold brother to catch one of those.
Right.
But you ain't got no hands.
Right.
That soccer ball no longer matters. And that soccer ball is U.S. currency.
Wow.
And I pull out this football, which is my currency now. And you ain't got no hands.
Right.
And I say, come on out here and get your whipping. And I walk out there and say, you got me today, Rob. And you say, if we play with my rules and my ball from this point on, I'm whipping you every day. Because last time I checked, you ain't going to grow no hands.
Right. I tell you what, man, like I said, we're going the only way we're going to stop this if you got promise to come back. Because this is like a whole nother, because everything that you said from just being trained to what goes on the state floor, I mean, all that kind of stuff is stuff that needs to be talked about, but how do we address it? But how we're going to address it, we're going to come back and talk about how we can move forward.
I'll come back if you can give me a response on this question.
Okay. Is it for me or is it for my viewers?
I hope I'm talking through you to your viewers.
Okay, gotcha, right.
But I want this to impact you. I'll come back to talk to you if you can agree that this is a viable topic. I'm going to give this to you. This is not my topic. This is something that I have to think hard and long and hard about. And it just walked past me like a pretty woman. And I looked over and I said, goodness. The topic was people discussing it. And one person turned and said, we got to get rid of black excellence. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? We fought so hard to get to black excellence. He said, right. But you didn't tell me, I didn't get a chance to tell you what I was going to replace it with. We no longer need to worry about black excellence. In today's world, we need to worry about black revolution. When you put them two things together, I said, you got to explain that to me, brother. He said, black excellence is like the talented 10th. Some people can rise, the Will Smiths of the world, the Colin Powells of the world. That doesn't help the masses of black people. What helps the masses of black people is black revolution. Because in college, a non-black professor had one course, and the answer to that course and the test he gave was the American Revolution a revolution? It wasn't, because the same people that were on top in America were the same people on top when they took the risk to go to war. They were the same people on top. They became the founding fathers. But in France, a revolution, when they took over, the people on top got their heads cut off and the people took over. So the definition of a revolution for black people is maybe the time for black excellence, which is individual people rising to the top to win an Oscar and be Denzel. But everybody ain't Denzel when it comes to the masses.
Good point.
And so maybe we need to put that to the side, black excellence, and worry about black revolution that takes care of the masses. So do you think that's a viable topic for us to talk about next time?
That's definitely a viable, because it's actually, we're going to talk about chemical. There's certain things I want to say, but it's like this one gentleman I had on my podcast last week. He said that we see how they move, right? So they killed King, they killed Malcolm, they infiltrated the Panthers. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and we looked at these people as our leaders.
Medgar
Evers, all of them, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, instead of empowering one person, or, we can, like you say, the revolution is not just going to be with one person, it's going to be with the collective whole.
Takes a nation of millions to hold
Right. So
here's the issue, Rob. When it comes down to it, what the 60s and those names of people that are legends, because legends are dead.
Check.
See, they say living legends, but the actual definition of a legend is someone who has died.
Wow.
The takeaway from that I want you and your listeners to understand.
Wait, hold on a second. That went over my head real quick. I just thought about something. So, legends are people that died. So, what is an urban legend?
An urban legend, when it comes to a person, black folks misuse the word legend because it gives a very distinct honor, but the actual definition is not about somebody who's alive. When you talk about that, you call people icons, heroes.
Okay.
But a legend is someone, because it's legend. It's like a legacy. It's something in the past, and that person is not usually there. So now they have to put in front of it living legend.
Okay.
You've heard that phrase?
Yeah, okay, I heard, yeah.
So when you change that up,
right.
but here's what the point I want to get to. Well, the takeaway from the most powerful takeaway that I got away from that was this. It sent a message to black leaders that you should, if you're smart enough, when you get, as I told you, it's not about you. Mm-hmm. It's about your network. Mm-hmm. It's about coalition. Mm-hmm. It's about bringing people together mm-hmm. and moving and getting outcomes that you need. Mm-hmm. You never, as an African American in 2025, want to be defined as a leader because leaders become targets.
That's true.
And they take out targets. And the last time I checked, if you are designated as a leader, you have made yourself a target and people go hunting for targets.
That's true.
So here's the deal. Be a leader, move in silence, be strategic, uplift people, leave situations better than you come with, educate people, and here's the deal. Like Public Enemy say, it takes a nation of millions. That's the revolution. It takes a nation of millions. Because here's the deal. You get me, you got to deal with the 999,000 people that are going to be at my funeral. And just like in the movie where we saw by Malcolm, he turned and said, one man should not have that much
power. That's true, yeah. You're right.
And then you have the issue that was called the fruit of Islam. So the fruit. So if you can instill discipline, education, leadership, but don't be designated as a leader because now you become a target. You can go out and make change in the world. You can be the Deloitte Parkers. You can be this person and that person moving through the world like Johnny Appleseed, who's not an African American, but Johnny Appleseed is a legendary person, not a real person, but that went through the world making it better by just spreading the seeds. So you don't want to ever be designated a leader because the real world implication of that is that you have made yourself a target. What you want to do is do everything that a leader does, but never take the mantle or title because you have loyalty inside your DNA, but you also are humble.
Check.
And if you are humble and disciplined, people pass you by, or if they catch you and hem you up, you just simply say, you can take me out. You're just going to have to stop the 800 brothers that I have trained that are going to come behind me.
Right.
And the guy goes, 800? And you go, what did Biggie Smalls say? You're always sleeping. See, you didn't even know there was 800. You didn't even know there was 8.
Right.
For a group of people that are 13% of the population, you do want to be Wakanda. You do want to think like the Black Panther, but you can't do it emotionally. You can't do it sloppily. You have to have discipline so that, Rob, we are not going to walk this earth forever. But as I told my nephew when he asked me, he did something stupid. He was a teenager, and I sat him down and I said, do you understand how this works? He said, what you mean? I said, we, your relatives, older relatives, we're not going to be here forever. My dad said that. He said, son, one day I'm going to die.
I tell my kid the same thing.
That was deep when my old man hit me with that as a youngster. But I said, but what we do while we're here is to train you so that when we are gone and you go out of the village of Wakanda into the world and somebody says, you're a very polite young man, you're a very smart young man, you are a very gifted young woman, where did you get that? And you said, I was instilled with that discipline by my parents because they knew that there was going to come a time where I would be in the world alone.
And representing them.
And I had to be a good example because that is how you move. And this is an old phrase that people don't usually use that much. That is how you move the race forward. And people want to use, why has it always got to be about race? Well, in the conversation that we're having, Rob, let's change it to move the culture forward.
Okay, guys.
I'm going to hit you with, I do it for my culture.
Right.
So when I leave here, when you leave here, we want to leave examples of being better people in the sense of, when I talk to a lot of older black folks now, and I watch them talk like youngsters, and I realize you were supposed to be the one correcting me. And I'm watching you do trifling stuff.
Right.
that, the pants sagging, or simple things as standing in a line. Where somebody walks up and cuts the line and you say, excuse me,
right.
we were here before you, and the person says, well, I'm with so-and-so. That's not discipline. That's not right.
Right.
And I've had to tell older black folks, and it hurts me to my soul, how to behave. And I'm sitting there going, my mother was a Wheatley Wildcat. Only went to the 12th grade. But do you know, in my smart self, the best advisor, consigliere I ever had was my mama, who knew the difference between right and wrong and could tell me, break complicated things down to being real simple to the point that a 5-year-old could understand.
Right.
And when I was at the Capitol, I would work with those people, and they say, Mr. Butler, we bring in you all kinds of topics. How do you know all this stuff? You must be a genius, or you must be lying to us. And I said, you know what? I just work it like this. If I can't tell my 72-year-old mama what you're talking about, then I don't understand it.
Good point.
And that's what they said to me, and they felt like, we can work with this dude. But that kept the target off of me to be able to grasp broad, complex concepts and break them down, that I go back into Northeast Houston and talk to dudes on the corner about them. Walk with kings, but have the common touch. Be able to go back to Wakanda and say, hey man, these people think we stupid. But we can run the world if we get out here and do what we're supposed to do.
Right.
And sadly, we're not doing what we're supposed to do. Wakanda is a mythical place. The world is a real place. There's too many brothers, sisters in the graveyard over, what did they say on the Boondocks, them end moments. And
that's true.
That is sad. So here's the thing. Before we check out, before we let these people roll back, try to put us in a box, let's think about setting aside black excellence, trying to get to a spot, the few. Because the Marines are the few, the proud in it.
Right.
But they also use this phrase, the few, the proud. What's the last phrase they use on that?
The Marines.
No. The few, the proud, and the many. We need to worry about the many and not just the few.
Gotcha. Man, I say, we could talk for another 3 hours, man, but I tell you what, if you feel comfortable, tell everybody, like if you want to have your social media out there, people want to reach out to you and have these same kind of talks, or, or an email address or whatnot, because this is the climate we're in now, so, but if you don't want to give it out, I know you saying you about to fade off into the pasture and you got some land over in Timbuktu somewhere, so.
Sure, you can reach me. I'm Broderick Butler. It's broderick.butler@yahoo.mail. You can reach me there. I'm on Facebook, Broderick Butler, Houston, Texas. I'm on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is making a comeback because we're in the business world. So I'm on LinkedIn as Broderick Butler. I'm a political consultant / which means I take any and every client. Sad part is, though, for us, and you're going to look at me funny, but you're going to know, you're going to say, he said that. Yeah, we doing this? We doing this, Rob. If I had to depend on my community to make a living, I'd starve. So I got to go outside of Wakanda. I got to go outside of Northeast Houston.
It makes sense.
And I got to go work with people that don't look like me to bring it back to people that look like me to say, when you leave the village, this is how you make the world a better place, by being a Wakandan. Because they're going to see you all one.
Yeah, that's true.
But this is how you show them that you bring value to the world.
Gotcha.
You got to be able to compete. And remember what I said about politicians? But just about us. You got to be twice as good to just be seen as. And the key word that people keep throwing around in today's climate is mediocre. And you know what I'm talking about when we say mediocre. But here's the thing. I ain't never heard too many black people be called mediocre. Either we are the best of the best, or we not, and there is no in between. But other people, can be mediocre and they can rise to great heights and they can go through doors that we can't, but we can be exceptional. Exceptional. And still, there are a few of us, and the many is left on the other side of that door. Dr. King said, as he was departing this world, I am tired of knocking at the door of opportunity. I would like to step through it. This is what this should really be about. So you can find me, you can reach me. I'm on social media. I'm on Nextdoor, which I always try to tell people that's a community-oriented deal. You can find me on there. I'm raising ruckus and whatever. And you can find me on all types of other social media, and you can find me through you. So if people are looking for me, it is Broderick F. Butler, Facebook, TikTok. I ain't gonna tell you that TikTok is not my name. Sometimes you do, like I said, gotta move in silence. And because joy, being joyful is showing resistance. And you would say to me, what does that mean? Not getting caught up in other people trying to destroy your legacy, destroy your image, destroy the people that are mirrored like you. Be joyful. Stay on your purpose. Enjoy life. Love people around you. This foolishness is going to happen. But being joyful, not depressed, not sad, not sick. Being joyful, as Robin Anderson for Politically Street, is the resistance.
That's what I'm doing, you know. So, hey, y'all, make sure go to my website, politicalstreet.com. You know, I got the donation button on there. You want to just bless me or whatever, buy a T-shirt. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Politically Street. And so, y'all, until next time, man, we're gonna sit and talk, but anyway. Peace, y'all.
Definitely want to give a shout out to Political Street, man. That's one of the coldest names you can have. Because we out here in these streets, but these politics is trickling down, so it's all intertwined, man. So we got to figure out how to work it the way we work. So shout out to Political Street.